If you go back just a few thousand years, this pigment was a standard fixture on temple walls, royal tombs, and sacred statues across the ancient Mediterranean world. But today, if you walk through any chemistry lab studying next-generation quantum sensors, you'll find that exact same material being synthesized from scratch. It's called Egyptian blue, and it has been documented by material scientists to emit invisible infrared light so efficiently that it's now being tested for quantum computing applications, medical imaging, and art forgery detection, all from a formula first mixed together over 5,000 years ago. But if this pigment was really that remarkable, why did the entire recipe disappear for over 1,000 years? And if NASA is studying it today, should we be asking what else the ancient world figured out that we've forgotten? Let's find out. The idea of manufacturing a color rather than simply extracting it from nature is one of the oldest chemical achievements in human history. We've already covered a version of this material ambition. Ancient craftsmen used to transform raw substances this way, using controlled kiln temperatures to turn ordinary clay into hardened, waterproof ceramics. But those were structural transformations. What Egyptian chemists attempted was something else entirely, a color that didn't exist anywhere in the natural world until they invented it. Along the banks of the Nile, sometime before 2500 BC, Egyptian craftsmen faced a problem no known mineral could solve. Natural blue pigments like lapis lazuli had to be imported at enormous expense from mines in modern-day Afghanistan, making true blue one of the rarest and most expensive colors available to any ancient civilization. Simple plant dyes faded quickly under sunlight, and no locally available mineral produced a stable, vivid blue on its own. So sometime in the early dynastic period, Egyptian craftsmen turned to a process combining several common materials, sand, copper, and limestone, and applied intense heat to a mixture no one had successfully fused this way before. And unlike anything found in nature, this pigment formed itself directly out of a fired mineral compound, requiring no rare imported stone, no plant harvest, and no dye extraction of any kind. Their technique was simple, yet extraordinarily precise, drawing on three separate chemical principles that worked together to fix a problem no natural pigment could solve on its own. Silica sand, copper compounds, and calcium carbonate were ground together and heated in a kiln to temperatures between 850 and 1000 degrees Celsius, the same general range used to fire ceramics, but held for a very specific duration. The first principle at work was calcium-copper silicate formation. As the mixture reached the correct temperature and was held there long enough, the copper atoms bonded into a crystalline structure alongside silicon and calcium, the same way modern industrial ceramics are engineered to form a specific stable crystal lattice under controlled firing conditions. The key point here is that unlike a mineral pigment simply ground from a rock, this color was synthesized, meaning its exact hue and stability depended entirely on getting the temperature, timing, and proportions correct, a level of process control remarkable for its era. But here's what most people don't realize. The pigment's usefulness didn't stop at its visible color. You see, the same crystalline structure also produces something called near-infrared luminescence, where the material absorbs visible light and re-emits it as infrared radiation invisible to the human eye but detectable by specialized cameras. In a temple wall painted with this pigment thousands of years ago, this property means the color can still be identified today even where visible traces have completely faded, because the infrared signature persists in the crystal structure itself. The third principle is photon-level emission efficiency. Modern spectroscopic analysis has shown that Egyptian blue emits infrared photons with remarkable efficiency compared to many synthetic dyes developed in the last century, a property researchers didn't fully appreciate until recent decades of quantum optics research. All three of these properties compound one another. The result is a material that generates a stable, chemically synthesized color while simultaneously functioning as an efficient infrared emitter, two properties the original Egyptian craftsmen almost certainly never intended to combine. And this ancient technology has been proven to be remarkably effective by modern standards. A study using infrared reflectography confirmed that Egyptian blue remains detectable on artifacts even when the visible pigment has degraded to the point of being invisible to the naked eye, allowing conservators to map original decoration on statues and reliefs that appear completely bare today. And spectroscopic testing conducted by materials scientists found that the pigment's infrared emission profile closely resembles the kind of single photon output researchers look for when developing components for quantum information systems. To put that in practical terms, a conservator can point a specialized infrared camera at an ancient artifact, and any surface once painted with Egyptian blue will glow distinctly in the resulting image, revealing decoration invisible under normal lighting. And because the luminescent property comes from the pigment's fundamental crystal structure rather than a temporary coating, that signal persists for as long as the crystal itself remains intact, which based on surviving artifacts appears to be indefinitely. But these numbers come with an important caveat, and it's part of the reason why the original formula disappeared for well over 1,000 years. A study reviewing the historical production record found that Egyptian blue manufacturing required extremely precise kiln control, a narrow temperature window that, if missed even slightly, produced an unstable or dull result instead of the vivid, durable pigment. Their conclusion was that successful production depended on specialized craft knowledge passed down through specific workshops rather than a widely documented formula anyone could reproduce. And this is where knowledge transmission becomes critical. A firing technique known precisely to only a handful of workshops is only preserved if every one of them successfully trains the next generation of craftsmen. But the transmission bottleneck is only one piece of the story. The most problematic issue was economic disruption. The defining feature of Egyptian blue production, its dependence on established kiln workshops with generations of accumulated firing expertise, is also what made the knowledge fragile. As the Roman Empire declined and long-distance trade networks supplying consistent raw materials broke down, the specific combination of craft knowledge and reliable supply chains needed to produce the pigment at scale had nowhere left to be sustained. And there's a more subtle scholarly problem, a kind of documentation gap. This occurs when ancient craftsmen practical technique over written explanation. Because a formula passed down through hands-on apprenticeship doesn't require the same detailed record-keeping a modern chemist would expect. Because so much ancient chemical knowledge existed only as demonstrated practice rather than preserved formula, most surviving evidence of pigment production comes down to us as finished artifacts rather than working recipes. For this reason, later chemists and artists simply lost access to a technique nobody had bothered to write down in replicable detail, And because that gap went unaddressed for centuries, true Egyptian blue essentially vanished from the palette of medieval and Renaissance painters entirely. But beyond the lost formula, there is the issue of physical identification. Pigment samples degrade, get overpainted, or get misidentified in ways that finished artwork often obscures. Later blue pigments, by comparison, were reformulated using different chemistry and different raw materials, meaning restoring the original Egyptian technique required starting essentially from scratch rather than adapting an existing tradition. Chemists across Europe have frequently discovered similar-looking blue compounds through unrelated experimentation because the general concept of a copper-based synthetic pigment could be rediscovered independently without ever recovering the specific ancient formula. And even where 19th century chemists successfully reverse-engineered a close approximation of the pigment through laboratory analysis, confirming the precise firing conditions and proportions used by the original Egyptian workshops, took modern spectroscopic equipment that simply didn't exist until the 20th century. Research funding priorities have also made it more difficult to study artifacts like this at scale. As archaeological science budgets remain concentrated on excavation over long-term materials analysis, projects requiring specialized spectroscopy, infrared imaging, and cross-disciplinary collaboration between chemists, archaeologists, and physicists are rare and difficult to sustain over the years needed to fully characterize a single ancient material. So the real question we should be asking now is what this rediscovery means for current scientific research. And the honest answer depends entirely on where the technology matures from here. If ongoing quantum optics research continues finding practical applications for stable, efficiently emitting infrared materials, secure telecommunications, medical imaging contrast agents, or next-generation sensor components, Egyptian blue's specific crystal structure remains one of the most promising ancient materials being actively studied today. The cost of synthesizing laboratory-grade batches continues to fall as researchers refine modern reproduction techniques, while the scientific value of working with a chemically simple, well-understood compound offers real advantages over more complex synthetic alternatives. And because the material can be manufactured entirely from inexpensive, widely available raw materials, its potential integration into affordable sensor technology could extend meaningfully beyond specialized laboratory settings. But without further engineering development, treating Egyptian blue as an imminent replacement for existing quantum materials is probably not a realistic expectation. In the current research stage, most applications remain experimental, and a proven ancient pigment demonstrates promising properties rather than a finished deployable technology. In a field where early laboratory results can outpace practical implementation, extraordinary potential still requires extensive engineering validation before it reaches commercial use. In reality, for most materials scientists studying this pigment today, treating it as a valuable research subject with genuine future potential, rather than an imminent commercial breakthrough, is probably the more responsible position. A single well-characterized ancient compound offers a fascinating foundation for further research, delivering a rare case where ancient craftsmanship and cutting-edge physics genuinely intersect. And because drawing conclusions doesn't depend on assuming unproven engineering shortcuts, it avoids the overreach that early-stage technological optimism inherently risks. There are no confirmed commercial products yet. No guarantee the material will outperform purpose-built synthetic alternatives, and no risk of overstating what a 5,000-year-old formula can deliver to 21st century technology on its own. It just sits in museum collections and research labs, and it still fascinates the chemists who study it. If you liked this video and enjoy learning how ancient civilizations stumbled onto principles modern science is only now fully explaining, then subscribing and sharing is the simplest way to make sure this kind of knowledge keeps being found. And if you want to see how a 2,000-year-old Greek device calculated eclipses using nothing but bronze gears, a machine so advanced it took over a century of X-ray analysis to fully understand, then you need to watch our video on the Antikythera mechanism right here.